This is the first in a series of 4 short videos that will help you decide which specific hypothesis test to use when you're faced with a free response question that requires a hypothesis test. In this video, I'm going to go over the basic rules that you'll use to decide which test. In the second video, I'll demonstrate how to apply these rules in some specific examples. And in the last 2 videos, I'm going to go into a little more detail in a couple of areas in which students have the most difficulty. The keys to deciding which test to use lie in the variables and the samples. We're going to look at the number of variables, either 1 or 2, the type of variable, either categorical or quantitative, and the number of independent samples. First, let's look at the number of variables, 1 or 2. And we'll never have more than 2 variables in AP Statistics. If we have 2 variables, that's the easier case. We'll always be looking for an association between the 2 variables, and we'll never have more than 1 sample. If the variables are categorical, we will use a chi-square test of association. That's also sometimes called the chi-square test of independence. If the variables are quantitative, we will use a regression t-test for slope. If we have only 1 variable, then we have to look at more than just the type of variable and the number of samples. If we have 1 quantitative variable, we have 3 possible tests. Only 1 sample, and the observation, each observation is a single number. That means each data point is just 1 single number, and we have only 1 sample. We will use a 1 sample t-test for means. If we have only 1 sample, but each observation is the difference of 2 related numbers, for example, we take a person's heart rate before and after exercise, and we subtract the before from the after. Each observation is the difference in the before and after heart rates. In that case, we use a match pairs t-test for the mean of differences, because each observation is a difference. If we have a quantitative variable with 2 independent samples, now each observation will always be just a single number. If we have 2 independent samples, we'll never have 2 related numbers. Now we will use a 2 sample t-test for the difference of means. If our single variable is a categorical variable, now we have 4 possible tests. We're going to look more closely at the number of categories and the number of samples. If we have only 2 categories, that is, we have a success or a failure, the M&M is either yellow or it is not yellow. In those cases, we're dealing with proportions, and they are always z-tests. If we have 1 sample, we will use a 1 sample z-test for proportions. If we have 2 independent samples, we will use a 2 sample z-test for the difference of proportions. If we have more than 2 categories, for example, if we're interested in whether the M&M is either red, yellow, blue, black, green, or whatever, Now we must move to chi-square tests. If we have only one sample, we will use a chi-square goodness of fit test. If we have two independent samples, we will use a chi-square test of homogeneity. For this special case where we have 3 or more independent samples with a categorical variable, we will always use a chi-square test of homogeneity. In other words, no matter how many categories we have, whether it's 2, 3, or more, if we have 3 or more independent samples, we must use the chi-square test of homogeneity. This slide shows the specific function on your TI-83 or 84 calculator that you'll use for each of the 9 hypothesis tests that I talked about in this video. Feel free to stop the video and take a screenshot of this slide if you would like to keep it for reference. The next video in this series will show some examples. In other words, I'll demonstrate how to apply these rules in some specific examples. The third video, I'll go into a little more detail on match pairs versus 2 independent samples for quantitative variables. And in the last video, I'll go over in more detail which chi-square test to use. If you have any questions and need a fast response, feel free to email me at apstatstutor25@gmail.com. Or feel free to post any questions that you have in the comment box below. If you're interested in tutoring services, I do offer one-on-one tutoring, either in person or online. You can contact me again, apstatstutor25@gmail.com. If you found this short video to be helpful, please give me a like below and tell all your friends about me. Thanks for watching.